It was a golden afternoon, the kind that only shows up in dreams and wedding brochures. The garden was in full bloom, white roses, silk drapes swaying gently in the breeze, and every chair lined in cream fabric, neatly aligned. Mia stood at the edge of the aisle, radiant in her gown, her arm looped through her father's, eyes locked on Jason at the altar. Guests smiled, some already misty-eyed, sipping champagne and waiting for the perfect moment, the vows. But just as the officiant cleared his throat to begin, a sudden rustle echoed from behind. Gasps rippled through the crowd as a muddy, scruffy stray dog burst through the hedge and onto the aisle. Its paws splashed through puddles left from the morning rain, leaving dark prints on the pristine white carpet. The music screeched to a halt. People rose from their chairs, unsure whether to be amused or alarmed. The dog, however, wasn't lost. It didn't bark, growl, or wander. It trotted with purpose, straight toward Mia. Time seemed to slow as the dog stopped right in front of the stunned bride. Its fur was matted, eyes tired but clear. It looked straight into Mia's eyes with a strange familiarity, then slowly lowered its head and placed something at her feet, a weathered, dirt-smudged envelope tied delicately with a red string. Everything stopped. The guests. The whispers. Even Mia's heart beat for a second. The crowd murmured in confusion, an odd mix of curiosity and concern spreading like wildfire. Some guests exchanged nervous glances, others chuckled awkwardly, unsure whether this was some bizarre prank or heartfelt accident. A few even pulled out their phones to record what they thought was an unforgettable wedding blooper. Jason instinctively stepped forward, arm outstretched to gently shoo the dog away. "It's okay," he said under his breath, trying to maintain calm. But before he could reach the animal, Mia raised her hand and softly said, "Wait." She crouched slowly, careful not to wrinkle her dress, her eyes fixed on the strange yet calm dog in front of her. The envelope lay between them, old, weathered, almost fragile, its corners curled from time. She picked it up gently, heart pounding as she noticed something that made her breath catch. Her full name was written on the front. Not just Mia, but Mia Rosalind Turner, her maiden name. The name only a few still remembered. Her fingers trembled slightly as she looked back at the dog, which was now sitting silently, unmoving, staring at her with eyes that seemed to hold time itself. A hush fell over the garden. Mia slipped the red string loose with care, as if disturbing something sacred. She unfolded the letter inside, its paper brittle, ink slightly faded. It was unmistakably handwritten, a familiar, looping script. And at the top of the page, in delicate cursive, were 5 words that made her knees nearly buckle. "If you are reading this, Mia." Mia's eyes scanned the faded letter, the ink swirled in a handwriting she hadn't seen in years, but recognized instantly. Her breath caught in her throat, and her voice came out barely above a whisper. "It's from my grandfather." The crowd, still frozen in disbelief, fell completely silent now. Jason leaned closer, brows furrowed. "Your grandfather? But didn't he?" "He died when I was 15, Mia said softly, never taking her eyes off the letter. Her hands trembled slightly as she continued to read. The letter opened with haunting clarity, "If this reaches you, it means love found you again." Tears welled in her eyes as memories rushed back. Her grandfather had always believed in signs, in fate, in unseen threads tying hearts together. Before his death, he had written several letters. She remembered that clearly and entrusted them to their elderly neighbor, Mr. Holcomb, with the promise one day she'll need these. But he had never said how or when they were to be delivered. And now, on her wedding day, years later, one of those forgotten letters had arrived. Not in the mail, not by a person, but in the mouth of a muddy, nameless stray dog who had somehow walked through the garden gate and straight into her life, carrying a message from a man long gone. Mia looked down at the dog again, her heart pounding with something deeper than surprise. "How?" she whispered, but the dog only sat there, calm and steady, like it was waiting for her to understand something far greater than coincidence. Before Mia could fully grasp what was happening, her mother slowly stepped forward from the front row, her face drained of color, eyes wide with disbelief. She stared at the dog, hand pressed to her chest, and whispered, "That's Charlie." Mia looked up, confused. "Charlie?" Her mother nodded, barely able to speak. "Your grandfather's dog." "That's him." "But, Mia, he died years ago." The garden fell into stunned silence again, deeper this time, heavier, not the silence of awkwardness, but of something unknown pressing against reality. All eyes shifted from the letter to the dog sitting patiently beside Mia. Jason frowned. "But that can't be, this is just a stray, right?" But Mia was already looking closer. The dog tilted its head slightly, and her breath caught. Brown eyes, not just any brown, but that soft, umber warmth that always calmed her during childhood storms. And then she saw it, a small white patch on his front left paw, shaped like a crescent moon. Her pulse quickened. She remembered it vividly now. Charlie used to curl beside her grandfather's chair while he read, his white paw always sticking out from under him. That same shape. That same calm gaze. But how? Charlie would be long gone. He had passed not long after her grandfather, or at least, they had thought he did. Could it really be him? Or was this something else? Something that defied logic, something that whispered of love too strong to fade, of bonds that even death couldn't sever. Mia's hands gripped the letter tighter. The past wasn't gone. It had returned, with 4 muddy paws, and a message her heart had forgotten it needed. Mia's fingers clutched the letter as she continued reading, her vision blurred with tears. Her grandfather's familiar handwriting danced across the page, each word soaked in warmth and intention. "If Charlie brings you this, know I'm watching, and I approve it." A single sentence, yet it carried the weight of a lifetime. She could almost hear his voice now, that soft, wise tone he always used when speaking about things the world couldn't explain: science, dreams, intuition. He had always believed in messages from beyond, in love as something eternal. To him, death wasn't an end, just a doorway. And now, here she was, on the most important day of her life, reading his words from a letter carried by a dog who wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Mia's breath hitched as memories flooded in. Nights curled up in her grandfather's lap by the fireplace, his arms around her, Charlie at their feet, warm, loyal, ever present. After the funeral, Charlie had disappeared without a trace. Everyone assumed he'd run off in grief. Mia cried for days, always hoping he'd return. But he never did. Until now. She looked at the dog again, and it was like a piece of her childhood had walked right out of memory and into her wedding. His posture, his eyes, even the way he sat, it was all so familiar. Too familiar to dismiss. It didn't feel like coincidence anymore. It felt like fate. Like love had traveled across time, found a way back through fur and paw prints, just to tell her she was exactly where she was meant to be. The priest stood motionless, uncertain of what to do next. He glanced nervously at Mia and Jason, as if silently asking whether to pause the ceremony or continue. But neither of them seemed concerned with the schedule anymore. The atmosphere had shifted from formal celebration to something sacred, something far beyond flowers and vows. Mia knelt again, gently cupping the dog's face in her hands. His fur was coarse, streaked with age and dust, but his eyes were soft, steady, and full of peace. She leaned close and whispered, "Thank you," her voice cracking with emotion. Jason stepped forward and offered his hand, lifting her gently to her feet. He looked into her eyes, no questions, no disbelief, only understanding. "Let's do this," he murmured with a smile, "with your grandfather watching." The guests, touched and wide-eyed, quietly took their seats again. No one spoke. There was no laughter or distraction. Even the breeze seemed to hush in reverence. As Mia and Jason returned to the altar, the dog, Charlie, padded calmly toward the front. He didn't bark or move around. He simply lay down near the couple, right beside the flowers and candles, as if he belonged there. As if he was standing guard over a moment he had waited years to witness. The priest cleared his throat and began again, his voice softer now, more tender, as if acknowledging the invisible presence of someone else in the garden. A grandfather's love. A dog's loyalty. And a message that had bridged time, loss, and belief, all to arrive in this one perfect moment. As Mia and Jason stood facing each other beneath the arch of white roses, something in the air shifted. A breeze drifted through the garden, light and warm, carrying with it the scent of blooming jasmine. The delicate chimes that hung from the trees began to tinkle softly, as though nature itself had joined in quiet celebration. They began to speak their vows, not rushed, not rehearsed, but slow and heartfelt. Each word hung in the air with weight and meaning, their voices steady but emotional. Guests leaned in, touched by the raw honesty in every promise. No one reached for their phones. No one whispered. Even the birds seemed to pause in the trees above. And through it all, the dog remained still. He lay beside the altar, eyes open, head lifted, watching them with a quiet intensity that felt almost human. He didn't blink much. He didn't fidget. It was as if he knew this moment mattered, and his presence was part of it. Then, as Jason leaned in and kissed Mia, sealing their vows beneath the canopy of trees and blooming love, the guests rose in applause. Joy rippled through the garden. But the dog remained unmoved until that precise moment. Gracefully he stood up. His limbs stiff but not weak. He walked over to Mia, each step slow and certain. She turned toward him as he reached her, eyes glistening again. He gently licked her hand once, soft, intentional. And then, just like that, he turned. Without a sound, he began walking down the same aisle he had entered through. No one called after him. No one tried to stop him. They only watched silently, reverently. Because somehow everyone knew his job was done. Later that night, long after the toasts were made and the last song had echoed across the garden, Mia sat quietly on the edge of the empty dance floor. The celebration had faded into a peaceful hush, fairy lights glowing gently above her. Her wedding dress was wrinkled now, her heels abandoned somewhere in the grass, but she didn't care. In her lap rested the letter, worn, precious, irreplaceable. Jason found her there and sat beside her, sliding an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him without word, still holding the folded paper gently between her fingers. After a long silence, she whispered, "It was him." Somehow it really was him. Jason nodded slowly. He didn't ask for proof. He didn't need to. Some things were too sacred to question. They never saw the dog again. No one had seen where he'd gone after walking away down the aisle. It was as if he had simply vanished into the night, or perhaps back into whatever place he'd come from. And though Mia looked for him in the days that followed, part of her knew he wouldn't return. He had already done what he came to do. Weeks later, Mia had the letter framed in glass and placed it above her writing desk. It became her favorite corner of the house, not just a reminder of her wedding but of something greater. Of presence. Of love that endures beyond time and logic. Beneath the frame, she added a small brass plaque, engraved with words that meant more to her than anything in the world. Delivered by Charlie, love always finds its way.